You know, we had a lesson a month or so ago. I don't know when Mother's Day was. You know, it was anytime you talk about the mothers, you know, it's a beautiful thing to talk about. You mothers touch the hearts of so many in the family, and God really knew what He was doing when He designed the family and the structure of the family, and He gave the woman a really important part. But He also gave the man a really important part as well. And we're going to talk about that today, since this is Father's Day. Now, this lesson is designed for us to keep on encouraging ourselves to do what is right. However, I feel that there's a lot of people out in the world today, a lot of men who should be leading their families are not doing it. And what ends up happening is the family struggles and the family suffers from it. So I want us to think about this morning, about this lesson. And I want us to think about the man's responsibility, the father's responsibility in leading the family towards the direction of God. And I know a lot of times this falls on the back of the mothers. Precious mothers as you are, precious grandmothers as you are. It happens all through society. But still, that does not remove us from our responsibility as men to carry on the responsibilities of leading our homes to please God. Amen. And I really feel like when we do this, we'll reap a great reward from it. Because I know I have already. And I know every one of you men that's here today has already. Because God has opened up a whole world for each and every one of you. So God's word to the Father this morning, and I want to start out this morning in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1 through 4. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, so that it may go well with you, and that you may enjoy a long life on this earth. Fathers, don't exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and the instruction of the Lord. Now, as we look at this example here, I'm going to use an analogy of a wagon train, okay? Now, during the 1800s, and I like the Old West, and I thought many times, and maybe I really didn't know what I was thinking it was neat or not, but I thought many times how nice it would be for us to all load up on a wagon train and start from the east and go out to the west on a wagon train and experience the elements of nature and experience the things that is evolved around societies on a wagon train, and how, yeah, they did a lot of things on the wagon trains together. They had a lot of fellowships. They had a lot of things that they did together. And I thought that was quite interesting. But during the 1800s, there was a great exodus from the many families that left their homes and traveled west to take up their claims in the America West. Okay? And that was quite a journey. Now, I think Billy and Rita's getting ready to take quite a journey too. Although Rita, you're going to be followed by an RV, which is good news, and I'm thankful for the Lord for that. Amen. But still, you know, you're going to have your own little wagon train too, and you're going to have your little hubby following you as well. And Billy, you watch over your wife. I know you're going to. And I know God's going to be with you in everything that you do. Rita's going to ride her bicycle from the West Coast all the way to the East Coast. And that's quite a challenge. That's quite a challenge. And she's riding it for
St. Jude. To raise money for St. Jude's Children.
For St. Jude Children Organization. And I think that's a really awesome thing to do. But often those pioneer families travel together in a wagon train, like you kind of see here today. Can you see this picture a lot better? Because Nick put a brand new expensive light in our projector here, and you can see the pictures a whole lot better. So, an important part of any person on the wagon train of that time was a scout. Okay? And it was that scout's responsibility to pretty much know what's going on the wagon train. Now, he's not a scout master, he is a scout, and there's a difference here. Now, an important part of this person was on the wagon train. He went ahead of the train, sometimes days in advance, scouring the countryside, looking the whole countryside over to determine which way the best path for the wagon train to go. And, what he was doing is he was looking for hostiles, which I think our culture created the Indian hostility, the way we treated them, and I think it's a shame the way we treated them to get their land. And also he looked for watering holes, a place that this wagon train could go and find water each day or every other day or whatever. And he also scouted out which was the best place to camp. And many times this camping was beside the creeks or the streams or by the rivers, and he decided which was the best place to ford the river or cross the river, okay? So this wagon scout played a very, very important part of his responsibility of getting all of these people home or to their new destinations across the country. Now, he would also search the skies and the signs of threatening weather, because a lot of times they just knew the elements and they watched out some of the things that went. So a wagon train scout had the assignment of spotting a lot of hazards then, which would to watch out for enemies and the safest route to go and for the wagon train to take to be able to get where they need to be. Okay, and a lot of times when they was out on the prairie, the wagon scout, he would try to take back in that time, would try to take, since there wasn't no wood to burn, you know what they burned for wood? They would try to find where the buffalo had gone. And they would try to go along the road and pick up these buffalo chips. Now everybody knows what buffalo chips is, right? Anybody don't know what buffalo chips is? Well, we can explain it later. But they cooked on these buffalo chips. They cooked hot water and boiled hot water to wash their clothes in, to take a bath in. They used these buffalo chips to cook their food with. They used buffalo chips for a lot of things. And boy, did they burn really good. Did anybody ever burn a buffalo chip?
No.
Well, it's a whole similar, kind of like a cow chip, okay? But, it was this responsibility of the scout to find the things that they needed, to find the animals, the trail and all of the things that they need to go, and the water and everything to be able to get to the safest place. Now, when we're talking about all of this, in a sense, Father in every home serves as a scout did on a wagon train. And we're going to kind of use that as an analogy this morning. And as a father, as a scout father, I should say, you're taking your family on a journey through life. And it's really up to you, and yes, it's the woman. I don't want to take anything away from the mamas and the grandparents and anything away from them. But it was really up to the fathers to be able to make sure that they are doing things that needs to be done to get their family where they're going. Okay? So, as a father, you have a great responsibility to be able to lead your family in a direction today. As a scout father, you are to be leading your children, your family, in a right direction. Now, what do you see up here on this board? Well, you see a father. He's got his wife. He's got his children with him. And how sad today it is if you took this one figure out of it, and that happens a lot in our society today. The father does not, a lot of times, think that his really necessary for him to go and be with his family. But we all know that when we trust God, we know that we are to be leaders. This was God's plan for the family, for the father to be the encourager. I don't want to take anything away from fathers that's doing this, but a lot of times the father will leave it up to the mother to do these things. And this is not what God intended. So your task involves trying to keep your family, the moms, the dads, the children, headed in a direction towards God. You all that are in here, I feel like, does a good job. You try to encourage your family to serve God. But whoever's listening to the lesson today on the face page are not doing, a lot of times, the things that they should be doing. And I hope that everybody will listen to this lesson this morning. So this morning we're going to go, I want you to go with me as we go through life with the Scout Fathers. And I want you to see how important this is. Now, fathers, your family are counting on you to watch out for their hazards in their life. And that's a big responsibility. And I know that fathers are going to be asked on the judgment day, did you do what I told you to do? To take care of your children, to take care of your family, to bring them through a direction that will bring them closer to me. Now, Paul addresses the father's leadership, as we read earlier in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1 and 4. It says, fathers, don't provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and in instructions of the Lord. And that's really a big responsibility. Fathers, that is talking about you, or whoever's listening to this lesson this morning. So the essential truth of this passage is this: God calls all fathers to godly guidance in the home. He's calling all of us men. For all of you teenagers that's getting close to being a father someday, we don't want to hurry it, okay? No. But you got a big responsibility in front of you. There's nothing worse, and I'll come right out and say, as I have a deadbeat father that don't care about their family or their wife or their children, that don't take care of something as beautiful as that relationship. But the world is full of it. And they do not know what they are doing, or they would not be doing what they are doing. So as we look at this, your work, you fathers have a lot of work. You go out, you may have a private business, you may be a postal worker, you may be a self-employed. Who knows what kind of job you are? Some of you work at a chicken plant. Some of you have different jobs. Some of you work at banks. Some of you have different jobs. But you do some kind of work to keep a roof over your head. You do some kind of work to keep food on the table. But that is not your main job. Although, yes, it is. It's kind of a paradox. But that's not really your main job. Although I don't want to take nothing away from it. What you're paid to do each week is to go out and make a living. Work by the sweat of your brow. Your main job is your family. To take care of the family, to provide for the family, to protect that family. Everything you do in your job and your work is not about you. It's about your family. And why cannot people understand that today? There's too much eyes in the society today. So God has given you the assignment of leading the family. And that's a wonderful assignment. And He expects us to be looking out for the dangers of life, through the territories that can really creep up on us and to try to pull us down. Our Scout father has an awesome responsibility. Now, as we talked about Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1 through 4, Paul said, fathers, don't exasperate your children, okay? Now, this word provoke here, as it pops up right here, means to rouse to wrath, to provoke, to anger, to embitter. Now, what's he talking about? As a scout father, you're not to be the one causing dissensions on your family's wagon train. Your job is to keep them calm, to try to keep things going forward, to try to accomplish great things. It has to do with not provoking your children to the point of anger and wrath, to the point that they're not going to listen to anything you got to say. They just assume you shut up. You're so negative. And there's a lot of that in the world today. And I'm thankful for Christian fathers, because you have so much to offer to the home. So what this ends up doing is causing your children, sometimes your wife, to be resentful. So when this happens, they stop paying any attention to what you have to say. They stop following our leadership. It's kind of like a scout, okay? A wagon train scout. Think about a wagon train scout for a minute. What would you think the wagon train people would do if you had a scout that took them over the terrain that never had good water? It was sour water. You had a scout that took them into some of the most roughest terrain that you can imagine, or took them into a place where there was so much hostility day after day after day. What do you think is going to be the outcome of the individuals, the members of that wagon train? Rebellion. And that's exactly what's happening today. Fathers, we've got to make the right decision. Search the Scriptures. Do what God would do. Do what Jesus would do. So, scout fathers is important. To look ahead and to make the right choices. So, question. What's some ways that we can cross the line of irritating our children to the point of resentment? Okay? Now, a scout father should see and understand that overprotection is something that can be very damaging, okay? We can smother our children sometimes as we look at this overprotection when we never let them try to explore or go on their own on adventures, okay? And we keep them so tightly latched so that they cannot experience anything in life, that never had any freedom, they never had any way to learn how to handle their independence. Now that's shameful, isn't it? A good scout father is going to let his child, let the wagon train people know that you can get off of that wagon once in a while and start walking out alongside of it to get some exercise. You see a bunny rabbit, now I understand you got to use special care, and you don't want them to get rattlesnake bit, and you don't want them to get lost in the territory. That scout father is always paying attention. You're always right in his eyesight, although he may not be looking at you. Another thing is favoritism. This is one thing that a lot of times it hurts a lot of families. Now, as we look at this, we show favoritism when we are uneven with our interests and the concern or involvement in the different of the children, okay? Sometimes you may have a group of children and you treat one better than all of the rest. That don't go very good in anybody's book, especially kids that notices things like that. So a good father, a good scout father, is always going to be careful. He's not going to let that straggling wagon back in the pack because he don't have a good wagon or a good team like all the others have. He's not going. This scout, especially the wagon master, is not going to let them carry behind so far that they get lost. or they get devoured by the elements. And then there's the third one, discouragement here. A child should never or sense from the father thoughts like, well, you're never going to amount to anything. Okay? Or you can't do anything right. Can you imagine a wagon train master telling the drivers of the team, you can't ever do anything right? And the scout comes back and he says, well, you should be here at this point today. What's wrong with your people? Can't they do anything right? That makes for a terrible disposition in people's life. What you got to do is figure out how to get them where you want them to be. Don't be part of the problem. Be part of the what?
Solution.
The solution. And this is very important. And then we have the cloning effect. Okay, now what are we saying about the cloning effect? Well, fathers shouldn't try to make each child the same. We must not attempt to squeeze them into our little man-made molds. A lot of times this happens, especially in big money society. They want all the kids to follow what the child is doing or what the father is doing. They have individualities. They are how God made them, and God didn't make us all for the same thing. Then there's another one here that really breaks my heart, is the word neglect. As a scout father in life, our jobs is to provide food, housing, to provide medical, clothing and shoes, as well as attention and love, and a committed father and a committed mother and guidance. This makes for a good, wholesome family. So, a lot of times you don't see this happening. A lot of times the fathers are out doing their own little thing. You guys take care of your family. I see Brother John going down there and watching his children play baseball. I've seen a lot of you do these things. Jan is homeschooling. You look at all of what you all are doing and how you got the Lord life in your families. This is great. And then this brings us back down to this. Cruelty. Fathers should never have the right to be cruel. Or to take out their own anger on the child. It's just something that's not right to do. Or embitter them or frustrate the child. I want to read you something here that I think was quite interesting, and I want to let you know about it. There was a book written titled 10 Mistakes Parents Makes with the Teenagers. Now, you can take this any way you want to. This is just for your own data. Mistake number 1, failure to be consistent models. What do they do sometimes? What do they say? Well, do as I say, don't do as I do. And they beat the children up for that. Mistake number 2, failure to admit when you are wrong. What's their answer to that sometimes? I'm the adult, and I'm always right. Mistake number 3, failure to give an honest answer to an honest question. Here's what they reply. Because I said so, that is why. Don't question me. Mistake number 4, failure to let your teenagers develop a personal identity. You want to be what? Did you get it?
Yeah.
Mistake number 5. Failure to major on the majors and minors on the minors. What's the reason? This room looks like a pigsty. Sometimes we get so bent over the minors and we just kind of let the majors fly by. Mistake number 6, failure to communicate approved and acceptance. You can't do anything right. Mistake 7, failure to approve your teenager's friend without making any attempt to ever get to know them. Where in the world did you get him or her? Mistake number 5, failure to give your teenager the right to fail. You did what? Did you get it? Mistake number 9, failure to discuss the uncomfortables. Can we talk about this some other time? And mistake number 10, failure to take time. I'm busy right now. Come back later. Now, when we look at all of these things right here, you know, life is kind of like a three-legged stool. Think about a three-legged stool for a moment. And you know, it takes all 3 legs for this stool to stand up on its own self, right? So, when we look at this and we talk about what's these legs represent, well, we can start out with the kindness here, okay? Relationships are built up like fine lacquer finishes. You ever seen stools of fine lacquer finishes? Kind of like the one that, no, that wasn't you that fell off the stool. That was Carrie. You just let the one slip out from under you one time. Then we got some that you couldn't do that no more on. We got rid of him.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. But, you know, that is a very important part of our lives that we need to have is a relationship with our children that helps promote stability, okay? And if fathers, to lead your children, you must major in tenderness and kindness. That's that leg. So how can we develop this kindness and this tenderness? Well, first of all, listen to your children. Let them know that you respect their feelings. Number 2, be big enough to confess and ask their forgiveness when you are wrong and when you are harsh. And number 3, be touchable. Be touchable. Be generous with your hugs. Be generous with your kisses. Sometimes this don't happen in families. When they get at a certain age, they just don't do things like that anymore. That's getting lost. Affirm your children, number 4. Encourage them in their efforts. And number 5, listen to their input. Listen to the input of your spouse. And a good scout father will listen to his wife when the wife says, you're not treating your children right. The second leg on the stool is discipline. And discipline, when you talk about discipline, for the Lord corrects those He loves, just as a father corrects the child in whom He delights. That's a powerful scripture. Fathers are to bring their children up in the Lord and in the instructions of the Lord. This refers to training by means of rules, regulations, and rewards, and when necessary, punishment. I want to read this to you, and we're getting ready to stop. In Hebrews 12:11, no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness, peace for those who have been trained by it. So, when it comes to punishment, there's some things that we need to do. I need just one extra minute. I got a little list right here about what a good scout father will do. Define the boundaries before he enforces them. You hear that? Teach them. If they don't know what's right and wrong, how can you ever want to correct them? Number 2, when definitely challenged. When your authority is challenged and you are right and you're in judgment, stick to your guns. Don't let them get by with being the masters of the house. The father is the master of the house. Number 3, distinguish between willful defiance and childish responsibilities. Number 4, reassure and teach after confrontation. Follow up on what happened so that you'll be sure that they know never to do it again. And let love be your guide. And this brings us down to, that was the second leg, and this brings us down to the third leg. Instructions. The word instructions literally means to place before the mind. It refers to verbal instruction and verbal warnings. Now, you fathers, whoever's listening to this lesson, and I think you fathers are doing a good job in here. But there's some things you might correct from this lesson today. If it is, you need to do so. If you're going the right direction, keep on doing what you're doing. Because you have an awesome responsibility and God expects you to do what you're supposed to do. Praise God. Praise Jesus. May God be with you in your journey through life with your families. Amen. I love you, and may everything that you do be successful.